Okay, so I'll make a start now. So good afternoon, everyone. And I want to kind of welcome you all to join us today for this early careers professional panel session, where we'll be discussing AI in drug discovery. So my name is Jasmine Trigg, and I'll be co-hosting today's panel with Millie Fox, who you'll see in a bit. So in my day job, I'm a scientist at a company called Sartorius. So I work with application work for a lifestyle imaging system, and sometimes this incorporates AI-based image analysis methods. Outside of this day job, I'm also a member of the LRIG Early Career Professionals work group as well. So before we get into the panel, I'll just give a bit of background into LRIG. So LRIG are a non-profit organisation, and we bring together a wide range of scientists. So you can see here that this community has over 22,000 scientists, and these are from across industry, academia, and life sciences. So we work on a program that is free to attend. So this includes kind of events like this webinar, and this is supported by our vendor sponsors and exhibitors. So our community represents kind of a wide spectrum of the life science industry. So you can see kind of predominant members are in the industry itself, but we also have some members of the community that are in academia or also in roles that support the life sciences. We have a thriving ECP community, and hopefully the majority of you that are attending today would kind of define yourself as an early career professional. We are predominantly based in the UK, but we're branching out into other regions and countries as well. So we really represent a dynamic mixture of people, and we aim to kind of empower both kind of better research and communication as well. So we are driven by a number of kind of values and purpose, and I'm not going to go into these in too much detail, but they're kind of on the slide for you to read through yourself. But the main thing here is that these values really apply to any kind of event or activity that LRIG is doing. So finally, I'll just touch on some of the LRIG events. So the webinar that we've got on today isn't the only event that LRIG do. We do put on kind of a number of events throughout the year, and we've got those for 2024 here. So these include kind of other career webinars similar to this, but we also have in-person events like Research and Innovation, which just happened in March. And we also have the big drug discovery conference, which is happening in London in October. We also have some kind of more one-day smaller forums that we put on. So we've actually got a AI and drug discovery forum happening tomorrow in Cambridge. And this is going to be kind of a really good opportunity to hear some talks and kind of network within that community. And kind of excitingly, we've actually sold out on this event. So it's kind of great interest in that. What I would really encourage you to do is to kind of go onto the LRIG website, which is lrig.org, to find out more information about these events, and you can register if you're interested. So finally, I think I'll just touch on a bit of housekeeping, and this is more from a technical point of view. So this is a panel session, and we really do encourage you to ask questions. So note that we're facilitating this panel through Zoom today, and they do have a Q&A section. So this isn't the chat, this is a separate Q&A section. So if you put your questions in here, these will be visible to both the panelists and the chairs as well. What you can also do is vote for the questions that you see in the Q&A. So if this is a question you kind of wanted to ask yourself, or something you'd kind of prefer to be answered, then you can kind of vote for it, and we'll see that as well. We'll kind of see how the panel session runs, whether we answer these as we go, or whether we also have time at the end to kind of answer these. Anything that isn't answered today, we can pose to the panelists after the session, and then we'll get back to you with their responses. So this event is kindly being sponsored by SRG. So I'd like now to start by introducing Jan, and she's representing SRG today and will tell us a little bit about SRG as a company, as well as give some information on herself as a panellist and her career to date. I'll just pass over to Jan.
Thank you, Jasmine, for the introduction. We're very pleased to be here with SRG sponsoring the event today. For those of you that don't know, SRG are a scientific recruitment group that have been working for over 30 years, I think, providing talent across science, clinical and engineering areas. We are actually the biggest provider of life science talent in the UK and work from early talent through to C-suite, supporting career guidance, advising on CVs, interview techniques, and the majority of our recruiters actually come from a scientific background themselves. The early career guidance is significant for SRG, and we're involved in a number of apprenticeship programs with our clients, which is another reason we value our partnership with LRIG. Myself, I have over 25 years experience in technical recruitment, beginning in engineering, moving through technology and into life sciences. I work with early age startups, building their bioinformatics teams, to larger pharma companies and organizations requiring technical experts in the field of computational biology, bioinformatics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Jan. So now I'm going to introduce the webinar. So today the webinar is focused on artificial intelligence and how it applies to drug discovery. And we have a really exciting lineup for you. We have 4 panelists, which each come with their own breadth of skills and knowledge that range from different experiences, and they're at different stages in their career. So the aim of the webinar really is for them to give you their expert opinions on the skill set sort of required if you were to go into a career in artificial intelligence in drug discovery. And really we hope that you get out of the webinar the skill set and information that can really empower you as early careers to go into a successful career in drug discovery using artificial intelligence and machine learning. So just as an introduction to myself, I'm Millie Fox, and I'm a senior scientist at AstraZeneca, and I work in the cell engineering team. So I'm very much a wet lab-based scientist. So I'm using CRISPR technology for target validation. And I've worked at AstraZeneca for 3 years. And previous to that, I completed my PhD at Cambridge University in cancer cell signaling. So I am an early career professional myself. And I have very, very little knowledge of artificial intelligence. And this is my first time chairing a session. So I'm definitely similar to probably a lot of you that are watching online. So hopefully we can both get a lot out of this. Yeah, so I've been part of the LRIG ECP work group for roughly over a year now. And like Jasmine said, we hold multiple events over the year to really empower early careers, to give them the information and the skill set that they need to succeed in their career. So like I said, we've got a really exciting panel lineup for you today. And I'm going to invite the panelists now one by one to give them a background on their career to date and their experiences. And then after which we'll go on to the discussion session with some questions targeted at each of the panelists. And like Jasmine said, we'll keep an eye out on the Q&A for any questions that are really favourable, and we aim to answer all of them during the session. So I'll now hand over to Miles. If you'd like to introduce yourself, we'll do a round table of the panelists. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks for that, Millie. And yeah, hi, everyone. It's really great to be here. My name's Miles Pemberton. I'm a PhD student at the University of Bath, studying, my PhD is looking at using machine learning applied to chemical problems. So I'm looking at how can we use machine learning to investigate chemical reactions, specifically looking at how can we use this to try and synthesize pharmaceutical molecules. So my background, I did my undergraduate degree in chemistry at the University of Nottingham, graduated reasonably recently in 2021. After doing that, I went to work as a scientist for a couple of years at AstraZeneca, where I was on the research and development graduate program. And I worked on a variety of projects in computational chemistry, AI and machine learning, which then led me to the PhD program that I'm on now. So yeah, looking forward to sharing a bit more of my experience throughout the webinar. And I'll hand over to Harini now to introduce yourself.
Really happy to be here today. I'm Harini. I'm working at Cerna Bio as head of discovery platform. To give an introduction about myself, I started off doing an undergraduate degree in computational biology, followed by a master's where, I really just enjoyed doing coding. But as I moved on, all of this was in India, and as I moved on to do a PhD degree in Singapore, it was just the flip where I worked in a lab which was completely a wet lab and the only computational biology person. But that really did give me a flavor of, what it is like to use your coding skills very close to a biology background and working with people from different domains. And my PhD was mostly focused on looking at CRISPR systems, DNA editing systems, and also RNA editing systems like ADAR. Following that, I moved on to work at the National Cancer Center, Singapore, in a postdoctoral role. That really shaped how I started thinking about my career, because at that point, I was working in the intersection of, patient population, surgeons, clinicians, and pharma collaborators, and a lot of other researchers as well. And that's when I probably decided, you know what, I really love to do this kind of stuff, and I want to use my skills to be able to do something to the society in terms of, in the field of drug discovery. And I guess that's when I decided to move from Singapore across the world to Toronto in Canada and joined Cerna Bio, which was very young at that point, just a couple of months old. And then on today, 3 years down in Cerna Bio, I do want to say it's been a great journey, working very closely, building different parts of the company and having a great role as a computational biologist, but not just as a computational biologist, but working and shaping myself into being an important part in the drug discovery team in the company. And I look forward to exciting times and sharing my journey here. Over to Miguel.
Awesome. Hello. Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you all. Very exciting opportunity today and a great panel. Yeah, my name is Miguel. Lovely to meet you all. I work at Isomorphic Labs. But let me tell you a bit of my background. So I studied pharmacy for my undergraduate degree over in Spain. And after those 5 years, I moved to the UK to carry out a master's in cancer pharmacology at the London Metropolitan University. And there I had the opportunity to join the Francis Crick Institute, where I pursued my master's research project focused on studying E. coli recombinase kinetics using single molecule fluorescence, biophysical techniques, and also time-resolved cryo-electron microscopy as a structural analysis technique as well. And that kind of enhanced my interest in structural biology and protein science, obviously. So I'm one of the very few people who decided not to do a PhD because I didn't find a project that really fit my interest, I would say. So I decided to jump straight into drug discovery, in this case, AstraZeneca, where I met Millie. So here I joined the protein science team, which focuses in early stage drug discovery for the generation and characterization of complex biological targets, which are within the AstraZeneca's drug discovery program. And we work very closely with, we used to work very closely with multidisciplinary teams such as cell engineering, biochemical assay development, high throughput screening, and structural biology. I worked there as a scientist and later on as a senior scientist for 3 years. And at the end of those years, I had the opportunity to act as an interim discovery sciences co-lead within one of the programs that I was part of. And this experience as kind of the biology domain leader within this program is something that I really, really enjoyed. And I saw that my career could go towards that path. So that, together with my increasing interest in how AI could be applied to accelerate drug discovery, led me to then move on to Benevolent AI, where I was working as a biology project leader within their AI-enabled drug discovery pipeline. And there I was accountable for the design and implementation of biological screening cascades across different teams, such as biochemical assay dev, cell assay dev, PK/PD, in vivo, and transcriptomics, and more. And finally, from that, I decided to move on to Isomorphic Labs, who is a kind of new spin-off from Google DeepMind following the successful release of AlphaFold. And our aim primarily is to try and, as a digital biology company, to try and accelerate the drug discovery process by enabling new models of based on AI. So yeah, I'm very excited to be with you all today. Yeah, I think, should I hand it over to Jan, although I think you've introduced yourself already?
I think people have probably heard enough from me.
Thanks, Miguel. Yeah, it's probably a nice introduction from all of you, and I'm sure we'll kind of get to know you all a bit more throughout the kind of questions throughout the panel. So I'll start off with, I think Miles, we'll start with some questions first, if that's okay. So I think one thing that I think was really interesting to me is that kind of at what point throughout both your studies and your careers that you started learning and kind of using AI, whether it's quite early on or something you've more recently adopted, and how kind of in your current role, how you utilize AI, maybe given a kind of a bit more detail how this is used day to day, really.
Yeah, so I think I've had a sort of a reasonably slow progression into using AI over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. I guess it initially started during my undergraduate degree, where I developed more of an interest in sort of computational chemistry and how can we use computational methods that weren't necessarily related to AI, but other computational methods to solve problems in chemistry. So when I was doing my undergraduate degree, I had a couple of research placements and also did my master's project in computational chemistry. It wasn't anything related to AI, but that was a really, really nice experience, really nice introduction to how we can use computers, computational methods to try and understand some of the problems that we're having. And it was also great from a sort of skills perspective for me to build up a few skills in like coding, sort of computer literacy, programming, that sort of stuff. Then after I graduated in 2021, I started on AstraZeneca's research and development graduate program. This was a really nice program. It was a 2-year program where I did 3 8-month placements working in 3 different departments. My first 2 placements were in sort of biomolecular modeling and again, more traditional computational chemistry. So I didn't really come across much AI until my final placement. Where I specifically thought, right, I really want to get some experience working with AI. Obviously, this is a massive field at the moment. It was something that I was really wanting to learn a little bit more about. So I took on this project in sort of drug discovery and looking at basically, can we identify the biological effects that a chemical molecule might have? And in order to do this, we had absolutely tons of data from big online databases with tens of thousands of chemical compounds. So it was sort of an ideal problem to approach with AI. So I was able to use some of the skills that I had previously in sort of Python programming, coding, and so on, apply this to this new project, and started to use other people's models that they'd built and that they'd written, and apply them to and then apply them to the data that I had. Moving on then, I thought, well, this is really cool, really enjoy this sort of stuff. So I started my PhD program here at the University of Bath. And my program is, I think they call it a 3+1 program. It's a little bit different to a conventional sort of PhD, where I do a 1-year master's followed by my 3-year PhD. So I'm actually just coming to the end of my first year, which is completing a master's in AI. So this has been really nice because my background originally was in chemistry. I've been sort of doing this year modules in machine learning, in statistics, in computer science, and really sort of building up those programming skills and getting a really good understanding of machine learning, of a lot of the algorithms, to the point where I'm now actually at a position where I can start to think about writing some of these pieces of code myself, and will, as of sort of in the next couple of months, be starting to transition over to my PhD research, which is going to be looking at how can we use machine learning to analyze chemical reactions and understand chemical reactions. More specifically, we're going to be really looking at, can we take in loads and loads of data from chemical reactions, use that to identify specific properties of those reactions, and then use that to predict new reactions that might be useful when we're trying to synthesize new pharmaceuticals. So that's sort of where I've been and where I'm going to. Yeah.
No, it's really interesting. Really interesting to hear. Thank you. And like you said, I think probably one of the main benefits of, well, one of the benefits of AI is when you've got that kind of big data set, is really being able to kind of, kind of develop things and pull that together. And I guess
Absolutely.
I guess you touched on it a lot throughout kind of describing your research and journey as such, was the different skill sets that you either had or kind of developed or kind of recognized that you needed if you wanted to go into that AI field. So I guess from a research perspective, but also from a ECP perspective, are there any kind of other skill sets that you would really recommend that would be useful to learn for kind of people wanting to go into this area?
Yeah, so I think in the first instance, it's to have some sort of computer literacy, and knowing how to code, knowing how to program, obviously is a really useful skill to have if you want to do any sort of data analysis work or things relating to AI, or even going on to write some of your own AI models and algorithms. For me, predominantly, and I think it's the case for most people, Python is the primary primary programming language that we use in AI and use to sort of apply machine learning models and things. So building up knowledge in Python, if you get that opportunity, is obviously really good. As we already alluded to, AI and machine learning in particular relies on massive amounts of data. And I guess most people on this call will be scientists, and we use massive amounts of data sort of within our daily lives every day, whether you're generating data from an experiment or whether you're working with it computationally like I do. So I think that's a really nice sort of way people could maybe get into it if you haven't got those skills already. If you've never had any opportunity programming, maybe you at the moment use Excel to make all of your plots and to process all your data. Maybe you have a go at a little online tutorial and say, right, well, can I use Python to do this instead? Because it's actually it's a really powerful programming language for doing those sorts of things. So that could be a really sort of neat way of getting into it. Other skills, I think coding in itself, I think, is a really fun problem-solving exercise. You write a piece of code, it doesn't work, you then have to go through it, bug fix, have a look at what's going wrong. So if you're somebody who is maybe quite analytically minded, has those sorts of problem-solving skills, then a transition into this sort of field could be something that you would find really interesting. In terms of sort of routes into it, other than the sort of the learning by doing, as I just mentioned, and I think that's what I did when I was in AstraZeneca. I sort of got put on a project that was relating to AI and just muddled through until I started to understand it a little bit more. There's obviously loads of courses available online. You could, if you really wanted to, do what I've done and go to a master's and a PhD in this sort of thing if you're at that stage of your career. I've also noticed here at Bath there's a really good focus on teaching undergraduates coding. So for our first year chemists now, we actually run a really cool Python course. And I think that's a trend that's being followed across a lot of universities now. So if you are an undergraduate student, maybe you could have a look at taking on some of those courses. But yeah, there's loads of routes into it at the moment, which I think is really promising. And even if you're just someone who just wants to know about AI without actually wanting to use it, just have a look at all the exciting research out there that's coming out. Just read about what it can do, read about the sort of potential of it, and maybe have a think about how it can be applied to your own work.
Yeah, that's great. Some really useful tips there, I think, and probably I'd echo especially with things like coding and like say using Python and stuff. There is a lot of tools online as well. I think I've got very, very basic Python. I wouldn't say I'm good by any means, but yeah, I was just able to, there's a lot of kind of online free to use tools where you can kind of practice and develop that as you go, which is really useful. Okay, great. I think that's any the questions for you for now, but if anything comes up, we'll just kind of come back to you. And I'll pass over to Millie for the next.
Okay, thanks, Miles. That was brilliant. So now we're going to question Harini. So she works at Serena Bio. So we're sort of hearing from a later career perspective from a biotech startup company. So for the listeners, could you give them a bit of an idea what it's like working for a startup? And you mentioned in your briefing that you played lots of different roles within the company. Could you also give us an idea of them roles, what they involved, how you wore so many hats when you joined Serena Bio?
Really, I think that's a very interesting question, right? And in general, this was my thought before I joined Serena Bio as well. When you ask people what it's like working in a startup, people have a ton of pros and cons that they associate with working in a startup. And that's generally true. Like, it's definitely not a 9-to-5 job. You have unconventional compensation packages. You do have to work in a very limited resource environment. It's not like you have all the resources in the world to work with. Having said all of that, I think what I feel are the best parts of working in a startup does include the fact that, you have visibility working across the whole company, like really seeing everything that's happening in the company. And I say this because I joined like as number 2 employee in Cerna Bio after our CEO, being a permanent employee in the company. I do have visibility across everything that's happening in the company. We are less than 20 right now, and I can guarantee that everybody in the company has that. And you do have the opportunity, because you're working with limited resources and a small team, you have the opportunity to learn a lot of skills. A new thing comes up, you can put your hands up and say, you know what, I don't know that, but I wish to learn that and work and contribute on that for the company. And there's definitely scope to do that, which to me as a scientist also gives me the feel of, I have the ability to innovate, not just, on the scientific level, but also really use my skills and build upon them, right? So I do think all of these are really great things. Having said that, it's not just the technical skills, right? You get to play a part in building the company culture. You get to learn a lot of other soft skills, which include like you're working in a very fast-paced, dynamic environment. You're handling pressure day in, day out. I log out every day, let's say, these are the tasks that I'm going to do the next day. But when I log in the next day, it's going to be very different from what I thought the day before when I logged off, because in Cerna Bio, we work across different time zones. So we have a team in the UK and Europe that's working. I work from the EST time zone. We have a PST time zone group as well. And so after I dial off, there are so many people who are continuously working, and things have changed so much between, let's say, the 10 hours that I take off and then come back. So really trying to work through all of those, along with that steep learning curve and time management that's needed, I think are really great skills to learn. So if you ask me, in my personal opinion, this is a line that I really love to tell to many people who join our company as well, and people who ask me, yes, there are lots of pros and cons, but I believe in my personal experience of having spent 3 years that, it really depends on your priorities. As in, it's worked for me for these 3 years. I don't know if working in a startup will work for me 5 years down the line. But in these 3 years, I did want these as my priority. I did want a wholesome development. I did want a faster growing career, and really wanted to explore a lot of things, because when I stepped out of academics into industry, I was not pretty sure what I wanted to do, right? I knew I wanted to be in this environment, but not pretty sure. So I do think this environment really gave me that opportunity to learn as I grew and really grow towards, and now I have a clear idea on where I want to go, right? Like the path that I want to take as I'm working in this space. To address the second part of your question, and I think it's a nice segue, right? Like I said, it's not just technical, but a lot of other skills that you learn. What did I do in Cerna Bio? When I joined Cerna Bio, I was a computational biologist. I had a lot of skill set around, molecular modeling, simulations, looking at biomolecular systems in 2D and 3D space. To give a little bit of background, Cerna Bio is a biotech company, and our goal is to really target RNA. So when I joined Cerna Bio, my first goal was pretty much to build a database of RNA structures that we can go after. So I started off working on building our Target ID platform, and I'm really proud today to say that I worked very closely with our CEO and CSO to build our first druggable map of the human transcriptome, proprietary database of RNA structures that we can target, right? So that's really something that I don't know I would have been able to do anywhere else, apart from having worked in this space. So I started off as a computational biologist doing that. But then very quickly on, because we are a drug discovery company, we started generating a lot of functional data sets, looking at compound effects on RNA structures and things like that. So I started using my computational biology skills to really build pipelines and work on these. From there, I transitioned into really being an integral part of the drug discovery team, where I am today, where I put different pieces together across our team, from biologists to computational biologists, to working with people on the ChemAI side, and really taking our programs forward. Having said all of this, I said there are non-technical skills, right? So I can tell you one of the perks. On my day one, I sat on the other side of the interview panel, really being an interviewer rather than being an interviewee, right? And so that's why I say you get to play so many roles. You get to really be a mentor. You get to be mentored by really great people. a transition into a team manager. Like in these 3 years, I've moved from from starting as a computational biologist to senior computational biologist, a lead, and then now to being a head of discovery platform, which I think is incredible, and it's been an exciting journey. So, yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah, it sounds like you've really developed there. And it sounds like it's a company that never sleeps, that you go away, you log off and you come back and there's new data. That's really exciting. So the second question is just if you could comment on the transition from academia to industry. So you mentioned that maybe you found it a bit, I guess, quite difficult. What were your main learnings from that? And also, like, how did you develop resilience that way?
That's a great question. I do think it did take a bit of time to get used to it, right? Like I said in my introduction, I did realize during my PhD and postdoc that I enjoyed really working with people who are multidisciplinary rather than being boxed in one place. And the last tenure before I moved to Bio, which was at the National Cancer Center, really was what shaped me, right? I knew I wanted to move out of academics into industry because I wanted that multidisciplinary environment. But like I said earlier, I was not really sure what I wanted to do, right? If I was just doing the molecular modeling, simulation kind of stuff, I'm probably boxed into a very small section in a big company, and I don't know what I can do or how I can move up, right? So that was really my thought process as I moved out. I knew I probably did not want to do academics, but I was not sure where I would fit in the industry, right? And so I do think Bio was great as a startup where I could explore those opportunities and really understand. But it was not an easy journey. You're right, Millie. It's definitely not an easy journey because you're switching minds, and you're switching minds in an unstable environment, right? Like working in a startup, because of the fast-paced and dynamic environment, it is quite unstable. You cannot, like I said, you cannot plan what your day is. Every hour is going to be different. Every time someone else has something new, it's going to be different. You just have to reprioritize, and you just have to keep doing that on and on, right? So a couple of learnings that I had, I want to say in my very first month is, number one, everything is a shared responsibility in a company, right? A lot of the times in academics, it's like, it's your project, deal with it. That's it, right? It's your responsibility, deal with it. You do see that in many places, but I do think in a company, it's very important to understand that it's shared responsibility. And I have seen it, like when I transitioned the first 1 week or so, I would really dwell on my problems and things like that. But then as I started interacting with the team, I realized, you know what, nothing is your own problem. Everything is a team problem. And so it's just a matter of saying, you know, look, I know I'm the expert here, I'm supposed to be working, but I can't figure this out. Has anybody else faced this, right? And everybody in the team is ready to chip in if they have experienced something similar. So I think that was one of the major learnings that I would pick out. The second thing that I think is very important is also, you know, what I found is very important in industry is a closure for any project, right? It doesn't matter whether it is successful or not successful. At least in Bio, what we realized, because we were trying a lot of different things as we were building the company, we had a lot of projects, right? Certain ideas would work out, certain ideas would not work out. But really trying to get to an answer of whether this idea is worthwhile taking forward or not is more important than, you know, trying to make sure that the idea works. Which I think in many cases when we are in an academic setup, it's our project, we have to somehow make it work, is the thought process that a lot of us have. And we are forced to, you know, trying different things to jiggle around and try to make sure that we find some way to get it to work, right? But I did realize that in an industry, it doesn't matter. What matters is you need closure. I don't care if it doesn't work, just set it aside, right? And particularly, I think in startups, what's more important is to fail smart and fail fast, rather than, because you're working with very less resources. That is the key thing, right? Like really learn, fail smart and fail fast. So you're not really dwelling on the same things time and again. So I do think these would probably be my top picks, apart from saying, you know, you have a lot of other things that you're learning, but if I had to pick top 2 things, these would be my top 2 things maybe.
That sounds great. It's really nice to hear you've had a great experience of collaborating with your team members and and it's like a shared goal. That's really nice to hear. Okay, great. I'll now pass over to Jasmine again.
Great, thanks, Millie. So Miguel, I think we'll be the next panelist. So I think I'll start by asking what kind of inspired you to move out of the wet lab kind of in your earlier career and into your current role that uses more AI-based methods, and how did you find transitioning from that kind of wet lab environment to your other roles?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jasmine. Actually, I was just seeing in the Q&A that someone asked that question, so it's spot on. So, yeah, I mean, I guess my kind of experience compared to Miles and Harini is slightly different. So, yeah, as I mentioned before, I started my kind of wet lab experience by doing this master's research project at the Francis Crick Institute, which was very much like biophysical and protein science heavy work. I think that kind of created the fundamental technical skills that would allow me to then make the next jump, either to a PhD program, for instance, or jumping to something different, perhaps industry. So what I would encourage young professionals, for instance, is that developing those kind of basic and primary skills really opens up that career path, I would say, to some extent. And in the future, things can deviate so much. Like Harini was saying, you might start being a computational biologist, but later on you deviate your expertise so much that you become a completely different professional, right, to some extent. So yeah, I mean, I spent 3 years as a wet lab scientist in AstraZeneca, and I think this experience was awesome, particularly speaking that being in such a big organization for drug discovery really allows you to kind of get embedded for all the different pieces of science that are going on, particularly during the drug discovery process. So you get to kind of learn a lot about a lot of things. You're exposed to a lot of science and very innovative science as well. So this really kind of creates that kind of foundation of knowledge, right, I would say. So as I mentioned, I got the amazing opportunity of starting to act as a biology domain lead within one of the projects that I was working on. And this was more of a strategy role, let's say, so not wet lab per se. And this, allowed me to understand that this kind of decision-making role and more strategic scientific role is what I really enjoyed. So yeah, I found the great opportunity to join Benevolent AI, which uses their knowledge graph and an AI platform to identify novel targets, but also novel links for targets to disease, creating this very kind of innovative space within the population segment, different segments of population for unmet medical needs, which is super exciting. And here, yes, I started to work with people within the biology team, different kind of multidisciplinary teams within biology, and this allowed me to really kind of boost up these skills. But as a kind of recommendation or tip maybe to other people, I think it's really key that you kind of surround yourself by experts and that you don't feel kind of under pressure when you don't know things. I think I've always followed the approach that no question is a bad question. It's right the opposite. And I think even these questions allow more experienced people to learn from that kind of naive perspective. So that kind of mutual perspective or communication, I think it's key. So yeah, never feel kind of afraid to ask questions about things that are out of your comfort zone, for instance. And finally, I decided to move to the exciting company of Isomorphic Labs, where we are doing AI drug discovery following AlphaFold's success. And here we are primarily focusing in accelerating drug discovery by building AI and machine learning models applied to the entire process of drug discovery. But my role is not necessarily embedded in doing AI or machine learning models, but it's more about experimentally validating that our predictions are fit for purpose, right? And implementing that AI and machine learning knowledge is applied to drug discovery. So I do think that in order to enter to this AI, machine learning, drug discovery space, you don't necessarily need to have a very computing heavy background, but being able to make an input and kind of collaborate with the people who are part of this kind of bubble. Also being always able to be kind of interested and open-minded about innovation, about how these different AI or machine learning techniques can be applied to different applications within drug discovery. So yeah, I think, you know, even if you have like a more of a biology or chemistry heavy background, there's still an opportunity for you to enter this space.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think going back to what you say about just being really important to ask questions if you're not sure, especially kind of from those that are probably more either senior in the space or have a bit more knowledge. I definitely echo that. I think especially in this field, I find like the terms used are sometimes just, there's a lot of technical stuff that's just abbreviated, or things that can mean one word can mean something completely different to a biologist or machine learning engineer or something. So I think even just clarifying basic points like that really goes a long way sometimes. And I guess that kind of brings us to the second question a little bit, is looking at kind of the collaboration between different teams. So like you said, you in your current role, you collaborate closely between these different disciplines. Kind of how do you find this collaboration, and are there any other particular challenges that arrive through working with individuals from different backgrounds? So for example, kind of machine learning versus a more biological one.
Yeah, so here at Isomorphic Labs, we work always closely within a multidisciplinary teams. So always embedded by people who are in different groups, such as, for example, machine learning, data engineers, people from product, computational chemists, medicinal chemists, and more. So I think something that we are really looking for at ISO is this diversity of background, but also diversity of thought, right? So I think it's really key that when people, get together to brainstorm about an idea, each person from their different kind of background and expertise can bring those ideas, which will really click, right, and make that difference. For example, and also kind of stressing on what you were saying about communication, right? Whenever we speak, for instance, with data engineering people, which are, for example, more like kind of closer to the management and curation of biological data sets that we can use for our models, many times these colleagues might not necessarily understand what certain parameters which are in databases mean. So there is where this kind of a communication and more of a naive or humble approach really needs to play into the game, because I don't necessarily might understand how the models they are developing work, right? But as long as I understand the application and I can transmit this to them, that will basically lead to success, right, in the long term. I think another important piece of work is at Isomorphic Labs and at many biotechs, people are trying to develop the right tools to fix the right problem. So at Isomorphic Labs, we're trying to develop bespoke tools that will allow us to basically make this impact within our mission. So this is where kind of the importance of people involved in product, being able to be at that interface between drug discovery and ML and software engineering is really key. So I'm sure, this can basically extrapolate to other groups like Harini, for instance, being in the biotech space. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I'll now just pass over to Millie for the final panelist.
Okay, great. So Jan from SRG is now going to join the panelist session. So we've got a question in the chat actually, which is really, really related to the first question that I was going to ask you. So it's more from a recruiter perspective. What skill sets would early careers benefit from to get into AI and drug discovery? And it links to the question in the chat, which is more on, based on the current trends, where do you see the demand for certain technical skills in bioinformatics? And just if you could possibly comment on the talent pool, and if the current supply sort of meet demands, are there any any gaps, I guess, in the current talent pool.
Okay. Well, going back to the beginning, I know that Miles talked earlier about some of these areas and regarding Python. I think a natural progression tends to happen if you've got a curiosity in looking at the statistics and then the computing side, that you might start in R, move into developing some skills in Python, and then you can move those into machine learning. Machine learning is at the core of artificial intelligence applications in drug discovery. So if that's your direct route you want to go down, that's the route I would suggest in taking on your skills. It's a combination of skills as well, because obviously we're looking at the computational skills, but we also have to look at the scientific skills. So it's about being able to bring it all together. So you need to have some molecular biology experience or some genomics experience, and then look at the domain-specific knowledge that will go with that, how you bring that intersection together. And it might be the sort of chemical side as well, looking at the chemistry, integration. So it's quite a complex area to analyze. But fundamentally, if you want to do drug discovery using AI, machine learning is the first tool that you're going to have in your skill set. How you get there is through a number of different routes. There's the going through different qualifications, doing some online training courses. There's some quite good ones with Coursera, I think EDX, Udacity, which you can upskill on, get involved in other projects as well, network, make sure that you follow expert leaders, find out what's going on in the market. Blogs are a really good place to stay well informed as well. And if you can find a mentor as well to help you upskill in an area, especially if you're transitioning from one, say a wet lab into more of a computational role, find somebody to help you and guide your development within your current organization. Miguel also talked about the area of product. That is going to be a significant growth. I completely agree with him there. At the moment, we're not looking for those skills as much in the product area, but there's a gap. Which then brings me on to the other part of the question about, is there a sort of skills gap? Yes, there's a huge skills gap in this area. You know, we're in a fast growth, ever-changing discipline where if you look for somebody that's had these skills for 15 years, you're not going to find them because it didn't exist. So it's always changing. Skills are always upgrading, requirements are changing. So it's about staying on the ball, watching what's required in the industry, and looking for people that can help guide you. Back to the original point, machine learning.
That's great, thank you. Could you also go into a bit more detail about how the sort of skills have developed, or the computational scientific roles over the past 5 to 10 years, how they have developed? You sort of touched on that at the moment, saying it's an ever-changing, really dynamic field to be in. But I guess for us early careers, could you give us sort of a perspective of the past 5-10 years of really how quickly this field has evolved?
Yeah, I mean, it's undergone significant transformation, which has been driven by the advancements in sort of artificial intelligence and data science. If I was to go back 6 years ago, for example, looking for bioinformaticians, I would be looking for somebody who had a good scientific background and was able to analyze the biological data. And that would be what a standard bioinformatician would be looking for, is that analysis skills, looking at algorithms, looking at data sets, but not as complex. Over this time, the requirements, and this is partly down to the shortage of skills, we're trying to get one person to do everything. We're looking for people that are able to then do some testing, to write some coding, to develop the pipelines, to then go on to do more of the software engineering side, but applied to a scientific environment. So we have a lot of software engineers out there, but we can't focus on them because they don't understand the application to the science. So this is where it's a real opportunity for the future, is combining that intersection of science meet, computational skills. And I think that now the requirements have changed so quickly that we're saying, okay, we want someone with machine learning skills as well. We don't want somebody that has just R. We've gone from that in 6 years. And it's constantly moving. So we're asking more and more of each individual, and that is partly because there is a lack of skills out there. So if we have one person that has the scientific expertise, and then they have the computational knowledge, we go, well, we can't find many of these people, so can you do this as well? Can you do that as well? So there's going to be a real opportunity for, I think, the future and for students that want to go down this route. And there are lots of opportunities. You don't have to go the PhD route. You know, you can find other routes, which Miguel has shown himself. You know, there are, and Harini has done the PhD and then gone baptism of fire into a biotech startup, which, you know, is very, very exciting and lots of fun, and you do learn quickly. But I think it is changing, and so you have to stay abreast of what's going on. Attend webinars like this, go to conferences, listen to what people are doing. You know, LinkedIn is still a great place to see what's happening in the industry as well.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Jan. So on the same topic of like the evolving nature of artificial intelligence, we've had a question in the chat, which I'm going to pose to any one of the panelists. I think Miles has answered it, so maybe he could start. But yeah, any of the panelists who want to step forward, they're more than welcome to. But the question is, what does the future look like for data scientists, given that we now have developed AI and machine learning tools such as ChatGPT and AutoML? And what's your opinion? Do you think that these sort of tools will replace the work of a data scientist or an AI professional? Did you want to start, Miles, maybe? Thank you.
Yeah, I could possibly expand on my answer a little bit. I'm still very optimistic about the field, and I still think there's loads of opportunities out there. From an academic's perspective, you know, we're developing new models that have never been developed before, very, very poorly understood, and are trying to solve problems that just haven't been approached before. So from that perspective, you know, things like ChatGPT or AutoML, which I haven't actually used, but you know, if they haven't got that training to be able to apply to these completely unsolved problems, then I'd be very skeptical about how much they can replace me and try and do what I do, if you like. They are, however, you know, really useful tools. ChatGPT, I do think, is a really helpful thing for debugging little bits of code, or maybe just helping with very sort of basic tasks, and just helping you find out about things. But yeah, I'm still really optimistic about the field, and I wouldn't worry about us being replaced. You've also got to think that if people are developing these models, they're going to need computer scientists to help with that development. So there's always that sort of avenue for us to explore as well. And yeah, still optimistic.
I can also add to that, maybe, Miles. I think particularly the data scientists, I think, are going to have a long career. You know, given the space and how AI and the field is evolving. But I think particularly, you know, a piece of the puzzle, right, that is kind of key for data scientists is there is currently a lot of data available, but how good is that data? You know, I think there's a massive need for curating and being able to properly use all the data that is out there so that we can apply it to those specific problems, either to what, for example, Miles is studying or what other companies might be doing. So in that sense, I think, you know, data science, data engineering, and the mixture with, you know, other kind of scientific expertise like biology, for instance, or drug discovery, I think it's something that a lot of biotechs and a lot of kind of different backgrounds are looking for. So I think it's a very, very valuable kind of path to take, in my experience. So yeah, I wouldn't really worry about that being replaced. Absolutely agree.
I do agree with everything that Miles and Miguel are saying, but a slightly different perspective from where I am working, right? I'm working on RNA drug discovery space where, you know, it is a data poor field. And so just to give us an example, not every field we have data. And so there are probably tons of domains where we don't have enough data. And in spaces where we don't have enough data, we have an additional question to answer, which is why I believe, you know, data science, AI, ML, these professionals, I don't believe they would go without work anytime soon. Like, I don't even see a situation like that. And so as we start exploring newer spaces, there's going to be additional parts that we do need to answer, right? Like generate the data itself before you can start curating or before you can start building models. And so I do think it is going to be very, very rewarding to start thinking about it if it's something that you're interested in. So.
Okay, that's great, thanks. I'm going to wrap up the webinar there, but I'd just like to thank all our panelists, speakers. I think it was a really enjoyable session. You definitely see your enthusiasm for your roles, and that really shone through. And you gave really great expert opinions and answers to the questions, so thank you. If there's any questions online, feel free to keep filling the questions in the Q&A chat, and our panelists will answer them throughout. And again, if you want to keep in contact, I think the best way is probably LinkedIn. But this session is recorded, so if you ever wanted to revisit it, re-listen, you're more than welcome. And also just to keep an eye on our future events for early careers and just the larger LRIC events. So thank you all for participating. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes back.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
You.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.